very much, everyone, and all to you, Dr. Manorama Bakshi. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Am I audible?
Yeah.
Yeah. First of all, I should thank Taru Foundation and the UN Global Network, Compact Network, for giving me an opportunity to speak on this very, very pertinent issue, like how we can enhance the economies in an integrated development way, and what should be the actually model for the integrated development. Saying so, I see the role of NGOs, CSOs, are very, very pertinent in overall, whether it is the SDG development or whether it's the development, overall the development of India. I will first talk about like the main issues. I mean, it's not necessarily the views are necessarily the views of my organization, but I have been working across different domains. I have been working with government in the NGO domain, with multilateral UNDP, ILO, these kind of organizations, and also in corporate sectors. So my views will be based on the overall experience of 23 years that I had with different segments, and not necessarily where I am currently working, but definitely some of the facts will be from that also. And saying so, I will continue my presentation. I will request Chetna, Dr. Chetna, to put the slide. I may not necessarily go with the presentation because I'll be talking more about the CSO's role, their background, history a bit, and how like going forward some of the CSO initiatives and social challenges, and how we can go forward, like what are the key recommendations that will be actually the sum of overall summation of my presentation. If we'll go by WHO definition of, Chetanji, you can just move. If we can go by WHO definition of CSO, it says CSOs are a wide array of non-governmental, non-profit organizations that have presence in public life, expressing the interests and values of members and others based on ethical, cultural, political, scientific, religious, and philanthropic considerations. Saying so, what I mean to say, it is actually CSO domain is assemblage of the community groups, the non-governmental organizations, the non-profit organizations, labor unions, charitable organizations, faith-based organizations, philanthropies. They all together, actually, it is the culmination of those organizations who want to do something, who want to be the change agents, who want to do something for overall development of the society. Actually, civil society, next Chetna, please. 2-3 slides you can together go. Like, and now giving a big background about this history of CSOs. I mean, CSOs is not something very new. CSOs is something like, you can say, I mean, in ancient times, it goes back to Chandragupta Maurya. If you will look into the Arthashastra of Chanakya, he had mentioned like whenever there were famines and all that, how the communities used to come together for support of each other. So CSO formation, or if you will look into the actual definition of the CSOs, Hegel was the one who coined the word civil society. So looking at from the CSO perspective, I mean, if we will look at the overall, like the overall the public arena space, in that public arena triangle, the 3 vertices on which the whole society is dependent is government, then we have the commerce, or you can say businesses, and then we have the CSO. And the 4th, what we are considering is 4th estate is press. So our whole societal, this arena is built on these vertices. Saying so, over a period of time, we have seen that the government and the corporate, I mean, they have moved forward, while as the CSO sector or the NGO domain is a bit like, you can say, denigrated, or you can say, sort of like the word when we say non-profit. Unfortunately, we only see profit in terms of GDPs. We don't see profitability that the CSO does, because without CSOs, like I mean, the way CSO empowers the women, the way CSO educates the children, the way CSO is involved into the awareness of the schemes and policies of the government, and the way the CSOs have the vehicle and reach to reach the last mile. I think that is the big contribution of the CSOs to the whole world. At the same time, let me tell you that in India, when we look at Indian overall dynamics, in 2016, based on the Supreme Court directive, CBI had informed that in India, there are some around 31 to 33 lakh NGOs working in India. Or in other sense, you can say that we have almost one NGO for 400 people. While as when we look at from the public health perspective, we don't have even one doctor per 1,000 people. Or you can say we have 0.6 per percent only doctors for, you can say 1,000 people. Or the NGOs in India are almost double than the schools we have in India. So, but at the same time, I want to put it across that these NGOs, even though they have the numbers, we say there are many in many there, but somehow, like you can see, these NGOs are working in far-flung areas and hard-to-reach domains. Geographical and topographical challenges are there, and it's not necessary all NGOs have the same capacities, or they have the same kind of reach, or they have the same kind of tools to reach to the public. Some of the NGOs are just having one member, two member with them, and some of the NGOs have are big and robust and have technical competencies and are being funded by the both national government and international donors and philanthropy. So the strength and the capacities of the NGOs also varies across. At the same time, I would like to bring it to your notice is some of the actual, social movements in India, which makes us very, which makes it very much important to note that the way CSOs have led these kind of social challenges and social movements, like we talk about whether it is the Swadeshi movement that Gandhiji had initiated, or whether we are talking about 1972 Chipko movement, which was initiated by Mr. Bahugunas, but then the ladies in Uttarakhand, how they hugged the trees and ensured that the trees are not cut because they felt that these trees were their livelihood opportunities, and the whole environment will actually get into devastation. So these ladies in 1972 came forward and didn't allow the outsiders to cut the trees. Or we can talk about the Anna Hazare corruption campaign, wherein, the whole, the way he had come in 2011-12, and in 2014, we had altogether the BJP regime came into the power. It was because of the way civil society has led the campaign against the corruption. In recent examples, I can give some of the examples of Triple Talaq or Nirbhaya movement, which have been game changers in civil society directives. Chetna, you can go on 5th slide. So what I'm saying that when we look at the overall the history of these kind of social campaigns, not only this, if you look at, for example, I'm sharing my own experiences. I'm sharing the experience of like 2004, 2005, when I was working in HIV/AIDS domain. And at that moment, like we had almost 0.9% of Indian population infected or affected with HIV. And at that moment, civil society was the last straw that the government had. And they had actually targeted interventions they had initiated, and through NGOs and through civil society, they used to reach out to the sex workers, they used to reach out to the IDU, intravenous drug users, they used to reach out to men having sex with men. The domains wherein like government didn't have the vehicles or didn't have the reach. So these NGOs reached there, and India is actually world over recognized for the way we have brought down the HIV/AIDS infection, and the way we have contained it from 0.9%. Today we are 0.2%. So this has been possible definitely because of the NGO. Second thing I see as a huge game changer that NGO has done, and as a public health professional, I'm giving these examples, was about the polio campaign. When they had initiated, there were some of the segments, some of the sections in our society wherein they had said, if the polio vaccination is done, I mean, they are actually government of India's initiatives to stop, our populations, and it will affect our fertilization and those kind of things that come up from few segments of our society. But at that moment, like, civil society took the initiative to reach out through campaigns, through behavior change communication. I still remember there were some pockets in UP wherein we used the help of this several faith-based organization. I still remember some of the cases in Uttarakhand, the Udham Singh Nagar, wherein certain section of community were completely against the vaccination. So how we enabled and how CSOs enabled getting vaccination for these kind of people. So in short, like in a democracy, we see the governments are there for 5 years, but the robust mechanism that CSOs has, especially in participatory democracy, cannot be sort of like not thought of. Now, I will go to fifth slide, wherein we are talking more about like why CSOs are needed. This initially I spoke a bit about like some of the issues and how CSOs have come into address these kind of social changes. Now I'll be talking a bit about like the existing inequities in India and why we need the CSOs much more today than ever. The reason is India is 129th when it comes to the Human Development Index out of 189 nations. When it comes to the global gender gap, India is at 112. And I want to put it across here that India has come down 4 notches, 4 places from 2018 figures when it was 112. When it comes to the UN World Human Index, India is at 144 out of 156 numbers ranking. Even our neighbor Pakistan is at 66th position. And definitely when it comes to the sex ratio, you can see like we have introduced a number of schemes like Beti Bachao, Beti Padhao, or then all the states have their own schemes and policies. And we have the PCPDTT Act, which is supposed to actually not to allow the sex determination, prenatal sex determination. But irrespective of that, our sex ratio is 900 per 1,000 females as per the Niti Aayog report. Coming to the inequalities in wealth, that is absolutely glaring. We are saying that we have achieved on the poverty index of SDG, which is no poverty, zero poverty, SDG 1. But then if you will look at some of the statistics, which says 1% of the Indians, if you will look at the Oxfam report, it says that 1% of the Indians own 58% of the wealth. Or you can say that 10% of Indians own almost 79% of the total wealth in India. It's not about India only. I'm talking about the globally. If you will see, the billionaires own more than 4.7 billion total wealth of the world. Now, in this overall, India, including the global arena, if we have these kind of inequalities, I think that there has to be some kind of voice. CSOs have to be the voice of the marginalized, of the deprived communities. Chetna ji, you can go into on this slide. When we are talking about vulnerable communities and groups like scheduled castes, scheduled tribes, tribal populations, LGBTQ, bonded laborers, urban poor, people with disabilities, single women, elderly care. I mean, I think there are a number of groups wherein CSOs needs to look into. And now talking about, I will be taking one of the groups of this, even though like CSOs, now the government is considering. Initially, to speak to you a bit about this, like sometime back, I remember when I was working in HIV/AIDS domain. I have worked in that domain from 2004 till almost, you can say, 2009-10. And I remember that there was a time when whenever NGOs used to come, even though they were the main people who used to work in targeted intervention domains, but irrespective of that, whenever they used to come in the societies, AIDS control societies, some of the directors, I don't want to name, they used to say, "Aage ab ye," and that was the notion, like, I will blacklist you, even though that they were the only vehicles to reach out to these kind of communities. But still, the way they were treated was not very good. But at the same time, like, for example, when we talk about some of the vulnerable communities, I'm taking the example of glaring gender disparities we have. Here, the reason is that women comprise 50% of the population, and 50% of the population, if they are not having the right kind of vocations, if they are not having the right kind of education, if they are not having at par given wages, if there is domestic violence, definitely we won't have the right kind of societies. When it comes to the gender disparities, 1 in 3 of the world is child bride lives in India. This is a UNICEF report right now, what I am quoting. Of the country's 223 million child brides, 102 million are married before they turn 15. 121 million girls are married either at or after the age of 15, but before 18. This is UNICEF report. Then if you look at the 75% of the unpaid work, by unpaid work, I mean to say the child care, the elderly care, cooking, cleaning, washing, that women do. This I am talking about the McKinsey report, as well as I'm talking about the OECD report. McKinsey report says that on an average, Indian woman does 352 minutes of the household chores, which is unpaid work. Apart from like going into the agriculture or going into the fields or doing some kind of other work. These are the 6 hours. And if you look it from the male perspective, it is 600% less than a male, what male does. Then 92% of the women in Delhi have experienced some kind of sexual violence, or 50 million adolescents world over are forced into sex at any point of time. This is again a UNICEF report. 1 in 3 girls or women have experienced physical or sexual violence at any point of time in their lives. UN Women report. Again, 23%, or you can say, which has further come down in 2017-18, it's now 17.5%. Women labor workforce, it has come down. I think that in G20 countries, only Saudi Arabia is worse than, only some of the Arabic countries are worse than us. Otherwise, we are there. When it comes to the maternal mortality, we are at 122 per lakh of women. When it comes to the anemia, we have to think about it. Our pregnant women are 50.4% are anemic, and 1 in 5 maternal mortality deaths is because of the anemia, directly or indirectly. So these are some of the challenges we have with the glaring gender disparities. Then we will look into, which I already spoke about, the labor force. Chetna, you can go into 8th slide. Labor force participation. The slide I have taken, actually, this was the research which was done by this Mitali Khakori, wherein it was shown that the labor force participation over a period of like 10 years, how it has come down to what it is in 17-18 at around 17.5%. Then you will see glaring, like the reason for this labor force participation, why it has come down. There have been a number of reasons. One is that the women over a period of time, they are not paid equal wages. Second is that even though they are not given the equal kind of, they have to do dual burden of doing the household chores as well as going outside. Plus, these jobs are not really the high segment jobs. So and now in next slide, I will be talking about workforce participation is higher and unemployment is lower in rural areas. Again, you can find out like what we normally see from metros, we see that women are working, but their actual condition is not like that. And this is the NSSO report that I am right now referring to. In 2017, we have seen in urban area, the females were 18.2% employed, while as in rural area, they were 23.7% of the women who were in some kind of employability. When it comes to the unemployment rate, in 2007, we had 7%, approximately 7.1% of the females who were unemployed in urban setup, while as in rural setup, it was around 3% or so. So these were the glaring differences between the rural and urban areas, which normally we don't see it from that lens, like when we normally look at the metros. Even when we talk about the occupational distribution of rural and urban women, we have generally seen, I'm running a bit quick because other speakers have also to speak and I should not take the maximum time. Here I'll be talking more about like urban females, like when we talk about there is an increase in percentage when it comes to some of the service sectors wherein women are working as nurses, they're working in hospitality sector. There is a marginal increase on that trend. However, there is a decrease when it comes to the agriculture women participation. That may be because some of the tools, agriculture tools have come, so that may be one of the reasons. Now, as I already spoke, that there is a wide gender gaps, and it is both rural as well as whether they are working as casual urban workers or casual rural workers. That's a big challenge. Chetan, you can go to 12 slide. When we talk about the gender budget in India is extremely, it's not even 1% of the overall GDP. So you can look into that. That's one of the things that I think that our policymakers need to look into. Like if we have to get gender equality, we have to invest in gender budgeting. That's one of the things that I'll be seeing. Now, some of the strategies that I consider, I feel if you look at the report recently Niti Aayog had published, that was India at 75, and I'm also referring to giving some of the examples, not necessarily going by the PPT, but recently I had a chance to be in one of the meetings where in Niti Aayog is considering like CSO's steering committee group meeting, wherein now Niti Aayog has also, you might have also witnessed that post-COVID, the way NGOs have come forward and they have supported not only the NGOs, but philanthropies, like sharing the examples of like the way Tata Trust has come forward, or Aravali, or Jan Sahas, or ground NGOs, even Taru, the way you are doing in your own domain. So the way people have come forward to help and support the societies through whatever way they could, whether it's PPE, whether it's the food distribution, food packet distribution, or whether it is like reaching out to elderly care, the way NGOs have come together and the way government has also asked and actually taken the expertise of the NGOs this time, COVID time, is actually worth mentioning, because NGOs have been for the first time considered to be part of the empowered group at Niti Aayog. I have myself witnessed wherein there were general consultations, how NGOs were participants in those kind of meetings, or whether it was the consultation about the elderly care, how elderly care was facing during the COVID times. And I mean, there is much more need to get the NGOs on board if we have to make actual changes. And for the initiatives that they can set up is like Niti Aayog has spoken about, like strategy India 75, wherein we need to enhance the female participation up to 30%, how we can have gender disaggregated data so that we can have the policies and schemes that reach out to the women, how we can get 50% membership for the women who are the FPOs, and at the same time, like how we can increase the gender budgeting, not only that Ministry of Women and Child and health ministries are involved in the gender issues, but definitely Ministry of MSMEs and Ministry of Labor and other ministries also need to come on board. And above all that, we see that civil society, how civil society can involve the women, how civil society can look into the vocational trainings, how civil society can themselves, like together with government, try to make dents in Beti Bachao, Beti Padhao kind of schemes. How civil societies, I mean, they have a huge, you can say, stake in the development of the society, which I see, and the corporate sector also, how they can reorient their programs, how corporates can come on board when it comes to mainstreaming women in jobs, not only in low paid jobs, how they can look into the right kind of potential, gets the right kind of, place. I think that corporates also need to come forward. And to end up, I would say that the key question for the deliberation today, which I see as how we can ensure gender participation of women in workforce, so as to get the equity across, not only women only, but towards all the vulnerable communities.